We're getting into a conversation around the political alliances that we are seeing forming. It was bound to happen. We don't expect that political season in Kenya would hold anything different. And joining us in that conversation this morning is the Secretary General of the Jubilee Party. Today, I'm telling you, he's here as the show has started. And we have to take a moment to celebrate small wins.
Wow.
Jeremiah Kioni.
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning to you.
You know,
It's been a while.
It's been a while. I wouldn't pass up the opportunity to take that small dig at you.
Yeah, I know.
I think the
I also needed to sleep a little bit more. So that I can be able to wake up early and deal with the traffic and all the things that come with us, to us in the morning.
Indeed.
But we're happy to be here.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's been a while. Yeah. I remember the last time I was here, you were almost skinning me because I kept talking about Matiang'i. And it's Dennis who couldn't allow me to play, telling me, but you're always talking about Matiang'i, atumuoni, atumuski. So I promised myself that the next time I'm here, it's when he has spoken, you have seen him, so that I have very little to answer.
Sawa. See, that's part of the conversation that we'll be having today. We'll get into it because we are looking at some of those alliances. CT is not here today. But, you see how the people of Kenya have then relegated their power or their sovereignty or essentially their power to then set in leadership.
Yes.
So now CT has done the same to Dennis. And he said now give the proverb for today. So
if you don't do that, a shoe comes flying towards you.
Exactly. Somebody will lose a shoe somewhere. So you'll interpret that for us.
Yeah. So today's proverb comes from the northern country of Tunisia, whose capital is Tunis. And the country is in the Maghreb region of Africa and shares maritime borders with Italy through island of Sicily and Sardinia. Now, it is known for its souks. It has beautiful markets where people go to see what Tunisia is all about, especially their metal ornaments, really, really beautiful. Has a population of 11.8 million people, and their language is Arab. And our proverb today is, he who sleeps with frogs becomes a croaker. He who sleeps with frogs becomes a croaker. How would you interpret that?
You'll acquire the habits of those whom you interact with on a regular basis. And even as we form alliances, that needs to inform those of us who are getting into alliances. I think that may be the political relevance of it as to where we are. And I think it's important to be awake to that reality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well said.
That's it. Well said.
Yeah.
Indeed. Of political alliances and things that we see happening in government and towards real politic that's happening in the country at the moment. The Standard this morning has a headline. That headline is Our Turn to Eat. And it talks about one Raila Odinga who, for some reason, is always able to make sure that his people, whether it is his brother, whether it is his nephew, his daughter, or his sister, finding ways into government. Now, one would say that the strategic alliances that are being made today would lead to a position where somebody would then be able to be in a position where they too could eat. A few months ago, actually, about 2 months ago now, we saw the formation of a broad-based government whereby it was agreed upon between the president, Ruto, and Raila Odinga that they would say, okay, you know what, let's get all this fighting out of the way, let's get all this noise out of the way, and let's form a government that essentially was going to make sure that everybody was happy and that everybody could be part of this thing whereby it was taking Kenya forward. That's what they said. There was a 10-point agenda was to be met, and they said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go with this. Now, along the line, the opposition, which, by the way, Jeremiah, you'll tell us.
Why have you done this?
Because
oh my goodness,
you'll know why in a short while.
Yeah,
you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
The opposition has been forming an reforming and maybe
Growing
I'm not sure what
expanding.
exactly is going on. Growing, we see people standing on steps and taking pictures. The next time we see the picture, the people in the picture have grown by 2. Then one Fred Matiang'i comes back from outside the country, and seated with him in the airport is one Jeremiah Kioni. Don't think we didn't recognize you under the hat. We saw that
It was late in the night.
It was late in the night, and still we knew that it was you. So the question is, round about all of these strategic alliances, can we expect that there will be a better battalion for leadership that is being formed with the same people over and over again?
Allow me to just say Paulette to Edward's Quach family, and of course to the entire fraternity of Spice FM for that loss of a good worker, good friend, and imaba ya dunia ni gumu. 1 minute you're with your friend, the next minute he's gone. Poleni sana.
Asante.
At the this is a very harsh
headline.
But you see, there are 2 headlines. I don't know.
You like one, you don't like the other.
I don't think I have a problem with either.
Okay.
But both of them are harsh, but none of them, and both of them are addressing the same issues in this country: frustration.
Yes.
And Kenyans are angry, annoyed, because of mistakes done, deliberately or otherwise. This issue, may I start by saying that if I was to talk to Baba Raila Amolo Odinga, is to tell him to quit the broad-based government like yesterday. It will kill his legacy. And anybody near him telling him otherwise, he is not being truthful to Baba. That was a real difficult decision that I hope it was difficult to him when he made it, because it was a really difficult decision for Kenyans to agree to. And to date, they have not. And that's why you see this chew flying. People have spoken, wamesema, wametupa mawe, na wameona hata afadhali kutupa kiatu. Na unajua kiatu ni baya kuliko mawe, because the kiatu has a story. Mawe ni ile umeokota kwa barabara. Mtu anatupa kiatu, afadhali nitembee mguu tupu. And I don't want these idiots in front of me. You know that kind of, I don't want these leaders in front of me. And it's a question of asking yourself, how much have I contributed to that level of anger? And when we were in the trenches, I call them trenches also, in Azimio with the sufrias on our heads, and then the Gen Z came. It is good to know that there are those in power who are feeling with you. And even if they are not able to bring about changes, they share in your pain, and they continue being on your side. The movement of people from our side to government increased the level of frustration and the level of anger, and also reduced the level of trust that Kenyans continue having on their leaders, including those of us who are in the opposition. And I can tell you, opposition is a fairly lonely place, not because of many things, but because you find people abandoning things that you believed in at the beginning. In Jubilee, we are still where we were, of course, and it doesn't feel good to know that we believed in a cause that seems to have been abandoned by many. So I know, and again, it is not a good thing to say it's our turn to eat. Raila was one of the people who worked very hard to get our new constitution. And he has been on record as saying that you do not need to be in government to get development in your area. It is a right that is now guaranteed in your constitution. But again, to ensure that you are in government so that your people are appointed in government, and what I'm hearing a lot from people who are now experts in government saying that we are going to provide for XYZ resources in our area. You know, those kind of utterances make it look like you've clamored for something you never believed in. What was it that you wanted? And this is a thing that we cannot wish away, even as people look at us in the opposition. I agree with the question that you're asking. Is it for real, or is it, what is it? This is this opposition. Like I have said, today I feel a little different because like I mentioned when you were here before, I was talking about a presidential candidate called Matiang'i, whom I spoke on behalf for almost 8 months. But the last 2 weeks or so have been good for me because I need not talk about him anymore. He is there to speak for himself and to do what he thinks is right, and also to assure Kenyans that it was not, we were not saying it from nowhere. We had some kind of indication from his head, which he has now confirmed. How he wants us to move on from here, would wait for him to tell us. But it is important, like we said, that he reaches out to everybody. He sits with everybody, talks with the people. There is need to have unity. I believe that unity is crucial in the opposition, because if you are trying to unseat an incumbent, you need to be united. You need to sit aloud in a round table and agree among yourselves who among you is best suited to push those in the regime out of power. And Kenyans themselves will help you answer the question that you have asked. They will look at all of us who are seated there. And if you listen to them, while none of us is an angel, they will be saying, ni sawa, lakini huyu anafaa kuliko yule.
Which begs the question.
And the question comes as I say this.
Yes.
I hold the view that the decision as to who eventually emerges, if they all agree, and I hope they do agree, to challenge William Ruto, because it should be a two-horse race, never three. Whoever emerges to be the flag bearer of those of us in the opposition, it is best decided by the Kenyans themselves. And if we do it in the boardroom, we risk being disowned within the shortest time possible. Once you're in power.
Why does your union stand out and is posing a challenge or any threat, if there would be, to President William Ruto? And what promises does this union of opposition where you belong, give to Kenyans, that Kenyans would say, fine, we understand, we are in tandem with what they are telling us? And you say Matiang'i will give a way forward out of this, but what is the way out for Jeremiah Kioni? How do you want to see this movement moving out of this situation?
I honestly think that, and sometimes you say you give an opinion and people think that you are fighting. You're fighting them, or you don't want the unity of that group. I was so disappointed when Azimio started fragmenting. Because I knew with the fragmented opposition, you have given strength to that arm of the very difficult situation that you are in. William feels emboldened to do things that you would otherwise not have done, and even to say things that are difficult for our ears to hear. So I believe in a united opposition. Many people have been asking, why haven't you, why were you not here, why were you not there? One is that when Matiang'i was there, he's the one I've been pitching for. I did not need to be there. It is important that he now goes and gives, work to the people the way he wants to be there. And I can tell you, even from a distance, I'm also inside there. Two is that you also don't want to look like a gatekeeper of a presidential candidate. So you stay out, you stay away, so that it is his time. And I believe that that was necessary to do. But then I realized that you are doomed if you go. If you are doomed if you don't. People will still say many things. But I want to clarify and clear that I believe that we will do better when you are united. And I also believe that we do better when nobody is being, kept in a cage by anybody. But having said that, again, I want to say this. And I say this because I have also heard it. When you have a person who is gaining approval from across the country, a time like now, when you have a name that is being mentioned in Nyeri, and you can actually see when the readers who went in Nyeri embraced Matiang'i, and they kept waiting until Matiang'i walked in. When you go to Kisii, Nyamira, and you see the euphoric turnout without anybody giving a coin, people just coming out, and you see the whole country waking up the following morning and saying, yes, finally there is hope. It's only fair for us in the opposition to start coalescing around such an individual, because we make our work much easier. You make leaguing more difficult for those who are in power. You make the campaign cheaper for all of us, including the candidate himself. But if we sit and then end up with something that Kenyans will have to do, you need to go out and convince the Kenyans again. Remember, you need more resources. You've opened yourself up to many other things and all those kind of things. But me as a Kenyan, and as a Kioni,
yes,
a member of Jubilee, I am hoping that we can now move to the next step.
Which is what?
The shoe.
The shoe?
Why would a shoe be thrown at the leadership? And this is not a matter, it may sound funny, but it symbolizes the desperation level of Kenyans. It's like they are saying, we don't even believe that those of us elected can speak on our behalf. You pick and choose and talk to that person. You'd rather a stone would that be thrown to you, not a shoe.
And I think that's the thing.
And that is a bit.
I
And I'll
agree
tell
with
you
you on
why.
that, Jeremiah. And I have to just ask a question here, because that frustration is not only targeted at the president.
Yes.
That frustration is targeted at everybody today who stands in the position of leadership at whatever level. Because the opportunity to then be able to lead, the opportunity to implement, the opportunity to uphold the livelihoods of Kenyans has fallen through the cracks, not accidentally, but almost intentionally. That people have gone into positions of leadership and they have done as they please. And so that shoe is a representation of the frustration people feel not only towards the president, but everybody else who has not done what they were supposed to do. And here now, we have a group of people who've been in positions of leadership before, who have shared in that responsibility, and also, for all intents and purposes, did not achieve what they should have achieved, and are then coming back and are asking Kenyans to give them another shot. Why should Kenyans give them another shot?
I think it is a question of why should Kenyans give you, and it will be important for Kenyans then to agree. That's why I'm saying at even given time there will be a choice, or there will be choices available to you. And they'll say there is all these watu wote pengine wanafanana, lakini afadhali tujaribu huyu. That because that's the nature of our democracy. We will have to make a choice at a given time. And we will continue making the best that we can. When I mentioned the name Matiang'i, it is because I was also looking at where is it that perhaps we have seen some somebody performing when he was in power. Because at times, you may want to try somebody totally new, which has been done in other democracies, and it has worked. Or and other times, you may want to go with some bit of track record. And it is important to see. I liked what Matiang'i said yesterday, asking Kenyans not to give up and not to turn on against one another, because that is where it gets when frustrations get to this level. And I can tell you, when you now see Aseto, this is 22 billion youths, joblessness. 22 billion, meaning that this amount of money has gone to waste. It did not give us jobs. I think last week I saw a report again released by the government where they were saying that in this country we have, I think last year, we had 800,000 abortions. 800,000 abortions. And 79% of them were from married women.
Yes.
You don't look at them and start condemning anybody. You have to ask yourself, what has gone wrong in our society? And it is the frustration level, the fact that how can I look at another mouth to feed? Another person wants to be taken to school, who may fail, who may become ill, and I need to, that fear, that collapse system, we need to address it. These families, and this is why I'm saying we need to go to the next level, if you ask me. And I can tell you, we have engaged in this kind of discussion with others within Jubilee. Every single family in this country has a person who requires rehabilitation and a person who is looking for employment. Those are the two issues in this country. So even as we regroup and regroup and regroup, every single family in this country is facing a case of rehabilitation and unemployment. And if you cannot address that issue, if you cannot put anything on the table in terms of, one, a plan on how to deal with it, and two, we need to actualize it because it must be deliberate. And my thoughts on this, which again I've shared with a few people, and they are saying it's a wonderful idea, and which I would want to share with Fred Matiang'i as part of what we would want to put on the table as Jubilee, is we have rehabilitation centers in this country. They have been left to be learned on, it's like a side issue. They must be brought to be part of the core business of government for a given number of years. We must pump money as a government, and it must become a national project into these rehabilitation centers. And we must be able to link those who graduate from the centers with some form of employment. Kama ni kazi mitaani, something that generates an income for them. And this must be a government program, deliberate one.
Do you really think that Fred Matiang'i is the one who's going to be able to come and take over and then make sure that these issues that you speak of, you've spoken about them before, Jeremiah, you've spoken about these issues that Kenyans focus is on right now. Do you really believe that Fred Matiang'i is the one who's going to be able to come and solve that and get Kenya on its path to the next level?
I believe so. And if there is another person Kenyans believe can do better, nothing, the doors are still open, wide open, so that we don't sit here and we are crossing Dennis. Maybe he's seated there and he's looking at this and he says he can crack it. Or he has somebody whom he thinks he can crack it. But remember also, as a country, we need to ensure that it will be good to get a person who will garner upwards of 67%, 70% next general election. Why? You need a very big mandate, because a lot of radical things will need to be done. And you need time for you to turn things around. So you need a good mandate. A 51+1, which allows us or gets us bickering immediately after the elections, will not give you space, will not give you time. You are likely not to achieve anything. We can get worse. And that's why I keep really, even in my silent movement, in my prayer, hoping that this we can crack it. And I can tell you, if we don't bring in the issue of personal preservation to the table, and the issues of our own personal desires, greed, we start lulling around the individual that Kenyans are talking about, Sisi wote. Not because he is the perfect person, but because then it becomes a point where
he's a better option. And that's the thing, Jeremiah, that we are in this at least position in Kenya whereby, you know what, a road was supposed to be tarmacked, but at least there's Maram. Education system is supposed to be good, but at least children have sat an exam and they have finished. We are supposed to have a health system whereby you walk into hospital and you will be treated and not have to pay a cent. But at least some people are getting it. Then we say, okay, for somebody to then get into a position of leadership, they may not be the perfect person. Under their watch, certain things happened when they were CS. But at least he's a better option than what we have. Do you see where I'm going? And that is what Kenyans are saying to you. Why do we have to deal with an at least mentality for everything? From how your children are educated, to how your infrastructure looks like, to what your health system looks like, to what your food security looks like, until what your leadership looks like. Why does it have to be that way, Jeremiah?
I would really want, I keep saying that when we are in a position that we are in, you try and get the best. You try and get the best. And it is not going to be easy. Because the people who keep nudging us on, even when we are dealing with that issue for at least, are still the Kenyans. The people who need to make the decision of who is it that you want are still the Kenyans who will still make a decision of those at least. So it is not an issue that you can, it's not a decision that you leave with the leaders. The people who get leaders into positions are the Kenyans. And the most difficult thing that I've found is to try and get Kenyans out of their comfort zone. Unaona hii kitu tunasema Kenya hii, unasikiza ground. Kenyans are very happy and they actually tell you, sikiza ground.
Secretary General of the Jubilee Party, Jeremiah Kioni, is here with us this morning. And we're looking at these issues of, political alliances and those that are being formed, strategic to help out Kenya or to sustain political expediency for certain individuals. So with your support behind one Fred Matiang'i, Jeremiah, and what Kenyans are telling us, you're saying you're listening to the ground, and this is what the ground is saying, that this is the man that they want. Is it the man that they want, or do they want the current administration out? You know how we can say people vote for someone, or people vote out someone?
I think one is it is important to allow me to say it my way, because you are saying it your way and making it sound like it's my way.
That's why I've asked you the question.
The thing is this: I am saying that we, for the last, I think maybe now 7-8 years, we have gotten to the point of saying ninasikiza ground, and I think that is where we lost the election, because leaders like Kibaki, they never listened to the crowd. They led, and then the crowd gave approval to that kind of leadership. And I don't want to dwell on this issue. When I started talking about Matiang'i, there was no crowd talking about Matiang'i. I have talked about Matiang'i for 8 years. The crowd is now talking about Matiang'i. What I'm saying is that now that this leadership was given and the crowd is talking about it, it's in approval. If we now try something new, we will have let the Kenyans down more. That is the point I wanted to make. And I'm not saying that when Matiang'i or whoever it is that they will agree upon, I hope it is Matiang'i. I keep pitching for him because he's the one who has an interest in our party. And it is important to have a strong party for you to have to be able to deliver on any promise that you make. He then has to have the courage to lead. And some of the programs that he is going to take on are programs that are not going to be even popular with some leaders. It is Kenyans themselves who will decide who among us is out here to preserve his own, and who among us is perhaps capable to be a selfless leader. That is not an easy decision. And it's not a decision that we want to help when you start helping in it, others put a tag on you because they now start attacking you. And it is a very difficult thing. So Kenyans themselves must make, and the good thing about now is that Kenyans have better access to information they can share out even historical facts about how we behaved at one point or another. So the decision that will be made 2027 will certainly be better than the decisions that have been made there before, because it is informed by people who are more literate, people who know what they want, people who can see what others are doing, how other countries are delivering, people who also understand the difficulties that we are in. And when you talk about borrowing, they will be able to say when is excessive borrowing, when borrowing is being wasted. We are dealing with a more informed, population. And when you have a more informed population, then you're also able to get better outcome from them. And as you say that, don't think they will ever forget about this blood parliament thing. However much you try to arrest journalists and the rest, these are things that are going to inform the next crop of readers who are going to come.
As we talk about blood parliament and Kenyans being informed, there's a lot that equally have been raised with regard to the person who's Matiang'i, because Matiang'i was the interior CS during the previous administration, and during that time is when Baby Pendo was killed. We have the Yala River murders that up to date have never been solved, and there is the issue of court orders being disrespected that people argue started with one Fred Matiang'i. These are questions that have been inherited by the current administration that is there. And there is the bigger issue that we equally have to address. You've talked about debt and the ceiling, what is a lot and what is not. But remember, one person who is behind Fred Matiang'i is one former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, in whose administration the matters of odious debt squarely lies with him. How will Kenyans today sit and say Fred Matiang'i is the solution as pushed by and supported by Jeremiah Kioni if matters to do with odious debt at the time when he was the best performing cabinet secretary, odious debt was a problem and he championed that? How would you convince Kenyans that Matiang'i, according to you, is the best?
One is that issues like you have raised on interior and the other issues, I have said it before and I want to repeat, are issues that are best asked the person himself. I will not pretend to sit here and offer that defense.
Is it not making your job difficult in laying a case for Matiang'i?
I have done my bit. I have done my job. The rest is now for others to do it, including himself. And I would encourage you to look for him and do that interview so that he can be able to answer some of those questions. Because I'm sure he will not shy away. He'll answer them. He is not one I've seen him shying from anything. And that's also what I admire about him. And I would be very happy if he is able to, if you get him to do that interview and give you those answers.
Is he
on the issue of the debt?
Okay, go ahead.
On
with
the
debt
issue of debt, yes, debts were borrowed, but unlike where we are today, it is always good to borrow and do something. The former who was head of civil service, Muthaura, Ambassador Muthaura, and also Kibaki. But it's Ambassador Muthaura who came to Parliament one day when we were also complaining about borrowing by Kibaki administration. That time it was, I think, 1.9 trillion shillings. And he and also Kenya, by the way, also took us through those lessons as members of Parliament. And he said, if you don't borrow, you don't grow. The evil is not in the borrowing. The evil is in how do you spend the money that you borrowed.
Yes, but even after seeing decisions that were made about money that was borrowed and then still went on and borrowed, that the further borrowing that took place under which Matiang'i was in government at that point in time, at some point we knew him as a super CS even, at that time borrowing took place for which there was not prudent spending. And
it will be good to work with specific figures.
And then further borrowing went when the debt ceiling was raised to almost 10.5 trillion shillings. There's a specific figure. When we heard reports from the Auditor General, for example, that absorption of these, that there was, and this report came out just last year from the Auditor General about monies that were spent or not spent just 7 years ago in terms of money that then came in from supposed development loans, that we can't see projects for which they went. Absorption is very clear that it did not happen, to the tune of billions of dollars, money that is being paid to the tune of 117 billion shillings. Next year is 130 billion shillings, I beg your pardon, because it's $1 billion. Next year, the year from next, 2027, and folks are asking questions, where did this money go? The Auditor General herself told us, there are specifics for you. Jeremiah.
Not for
$1
me.
billion.
Not for me. You will still have to ask, but let me tell you.
Of 11 trillion shillings.
There is a difference between a ceiling and what is borrowed. The debt ceiling may be 12 trillion shillings
today?
But the amount of money that was borrowed under Jubilee government for a period of 10 years was about 6.9 trillion shillings. This took account of 1.9 trillion shillings that was taken over from Kibaki. That is over a period of 10 years. We are now at 12 trillion shillings.
The money that went...
Just a minute.
Kibaki's money was 1.9 trillion shillings.
Yes.
Uhuru's money was 8.7 trillion shillings.
Yes.
And now we went to 11 trillion shillings so far, right? The money that was borrowed by the Uhuru government...
now we are at...
The money that was borrowed by the Uhuru government went from 1.9 when Kibaki left government to 8.7 trillion by the time Uhuru Kenyatta was leaving.
That's a period of how many years?
That's a period of 10 years.
Where are we
and
now?
It is understandable that that it was raised by 2.4 trillion shillings by the time President William Ruto came into government to the date that we speak now, which is a period of 2.5 years, raised by 2.4 trillion shillings. Understandable what you're saying. But remember, the same William Ruto was in the Uhuru government for the 10 years that this borrowing was taking place.
So have you bothered to ask William Ruto how the money was spent?
Oh, if we get him in the room, that would be great. We have the Auditor General. The Auditor General has told us, because she is the Chief Accounting Officer for government, and she has told us very clearly that they have not been able to see projects worth this amount of money that was borrowed over time. A damning report. And she's to share another one because there's a current audit that's going on. In the month of June, they're to share another one in terms of where this money did or did not go. Because the indicators are already showing that they cannot see money or they cannot see projects for which that money was spent. And remember, Jeremiah, that lawfully Kenya can only borrow for development, number one, or number two, to fill in a short-term budget deficit a month to 30 days before a new budget comes into place. Those are the only two times Kenya can borrow. These are the things that we are saying. You ask for specifics.
Yes.
There they are.
Now, when you have all those facts with you, and the money was borrowed and not spent on a project, and we have a government report from the Auditor General, what action and who should take the action?
All the people who are involved in that process from the time the first shilling was borrowed.
No, that's not the question.
Who should take responsibility?
Who should take action so that we hold people responsible?
Parliament. The same people and the same people that we're saying
then
now.
When we have, yes, that's a bit. When you have outside Parliament, who else should take action? One, it's good that we have an Auditor General who is now has the courage to bring out those reports. Two, we have agencies that should then follow up and say who stole this money, because somebody must have stolen the money. Those agencies needs to have taken action on the thieves, so that there isn't a blanket condemnation of everybody. The constitution we did 2010 was very specific. It says every single person must be held responsible for the deeds or misdeeds that you do, not the office. And that's why, even if this is the president who gave you instruction, you are only supposed to act upon instructions that you received in writing, so that he can be held responsible. If we give you verbal instructions like weka lami kwa hii barabara without a written instruction, and we come out later and find out there was no proper procurement, we will still hold you accountable.
But Kioni,
so the issue here is leadership.
Kioni, that as it may, respond to each and every person carries their baggage. We agree that's what, but the buck stops with the president. And the president we're talking about at this time, I'm going back to retired President Uhuru Kenyatta. All these things happened during his tenure. When we talk about the $1 billion Eurobond that never came to the government coffers through the PFM Act, that was squarely under his leadership. And one would want to say the buck stops with him. He
And
is the
remember,
person
you
who
know,
is behind Matiang'i's leadership in this country. How do we trust
He's not
him?
behind Matiang'i.
He's supporting
you can keep you can keep saying that as is convenient for media houses to say that. But I can tell you this: this thing of the backstops with the president, that is a political statement. It's political responsibility. We are looking at criminal responsibility. And if you want to bring changes into this country, you go to criminal responsibility.
Doesn't change start from the top, though?
Even if it starts from the top, stop learning from what I'm telling you. You can say that, like even Trump said last night, that the buck stops with me. But if there is a misdeed that was done, who is this who was responsible for that action?
The government of Kenya.
Then you take the government to court. Can you take a
Who's
government
the
to
leader
court?
of government?
You can't.
Who's the leader in that government?
The leader will be the president, but
Thank
you
you.
cannot take the president to court. Dennis, I'm trying to educate you something
It's
here.
okay. We agree.
And the thing is this: if you continue hiding under that cover, you will never improve this country. The reason why we amended, we removed the old constitution and gave ourselves a new one was to move away from that old thinking. Where you can now say, it is you, Dennis, we are suing. Otherwise, if we continue with this blanket talking, you will not get anywhere. The system is such that today, before monies are released from X to Y, somebody must sign. And our constitution laid responsibility of the holder of the pen. So what our agencies are not doing to us, and that's why we need somebody who can help them do, is to hold you responsible. The day people will see the bars and you are behind bars, it's when people start talking.
You know something?
I don't want to talk about this with any bad feeling. But when you see a senior person spending a month or 2, 3 behind bars, Kenyans start saying,
I agree.
so,
thoroughly.
and that must be done often. What worries me about is the time it takes. It takes a little bit too long.
You know why it takes that time? Maybe because the thing is that a lot of the power that is vested in legislation is in the hands of Parliament. And it is this same Parliament that we're talking about today who makes these laws whereby some people are comfortable. That if we had a Parliament today who was ready to say that a CS, for example, who oversaw certain things, or a president who oversaw certain things, then also can be liable for answering to some of these issues, then you would be able to say, then it's possible that somebody who's powerful could be behind bars for 2 to 3 months.
It goes back to the same place we started.
Yes.
The choices you make. The choices we made 2022 or even 2017 ends up with a situation where we have institutional capture. I don't think there is any other better time in the history of this country where you can talk about institutional capture than this time round, where Parliament itself, members of Parliament are singing places all over. When that institution is captured in that nature, which is not the case in our constitution. If we were to read the constitution and implement it as it is provided, we will have an independent constitution or an independent parliament. And remember this, we were in the courts fighting for this parliament and its independence just the other day, until we got the court, a bench of 3 judges whom I have all respect for, clearly saying Kenyans intended to have a majority of members of parliament in the minority. And that was Azimio. And the minority in government, that was UDA. And they defined it. And even said, ordered the speaker to ensure that that is the order that they follow on the House. What did our members of parliament do? Even when power had been given to them, our own members of the opposition, even when that authority had been given to them, so that they can oversight what you are saying and call these people to book.
Okay, I have to ask you a question.
Just before you ask, I need to finish this.
Please finish it quick now.
They chose to ignore that and go to the comfort of being in government, joining the broad-based government. So some of these issues we are talking about, these mistakes, the institutions and the constitution sets these institutions in the manner it has for purposes of dealing with the issues that you have just raised. And as long as these institutions are not doing what is expected, these are not things that are not we are not going to talk about for the last time now.
Of course.
Even if we get the government of Matiang'i and these institutions don't do it, or
will still be the
any
same
other
thing.
That age.
So based on that, and that's the
If we
question that I
don't get
wanted to
them
ask.
do it, we not. If we
I'll
had
give you an
if we had the
example.
poor working, for example, the kids who are killed in Parliament would not have been killed by police officers.
Well, that's very true, but you know,
Because
also
they'll be fearing.
but you set up an authority that's supposed to deal with certain issues, but then you make sure that you do not give it the resources that it requires to actually get its job
And
done.
who does
so the
that?
likelihood of them actually doing their job reduces, and we see that same thing happening. Whether you talk about the Auditor General, she at the current moment doesn't have the powers beyond recommendation.
Who took away the powers?
And the same office,
Who took away the powers?
They were never given to her in the first place.
No.
The way in which the Auditor General's office is constituted, she is the chief accounting officer for government. At this point, her job is to make sure that she looks through the spending behavior of government and she makes queries. She can make a query and that's where it stops. Today, there's a bill in Parliament to see that power is expanded to make sure that she can then go beyond just raising a query and then making recommendations on what she has seen. Currently, she does not have that power.
Now, let me tell you, before even what she is doing, she was able to even do what you are now commending for her for, look at the old constitution. She could not even raise an issue that the Parliament would have taken over. Parliament was doing that work on their behalf. And that is how we are ending up with us auditing 10 years old accounts of people who have died. So you have nobody to hold account.
Okay.
So where we have come from is not where you are talking about. Are we where we should be? Not yet. But remember, there is something, I am happy to hear there is that bill. I'll tell you the other bill that is scary, and you can call her and ask her. You hear of the figures that she has unearthed. If the other agencies were to do their work, and it cannot be her office, by the way, the only thing she can do is withhold further payments to that agency. You cannot charge her.
To withhold would be to avoid would be Dr. Nyakango's office. Yes. That would be the control of budget. Yes. She would say, don't spend here anymore. Yes. But the one who would report would be Nancy Gathungu's office in terms of spending. To report on spending.
Yes, and she is.
She doesn't say spend or not. Nyakango's office says spend or not. The Auditor General, after the spend, is the one who does the reporting.
I think you are losing. She is the one who says the money was not spent on.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So
and when she says it was not spent, it is without doubt. Parliament would be able to say not spent by X, Y, Z if Parliament was functioning. And I would be very keen to see what other powers she is being given by that act. My fear is that powers are being taken away from her. Because that has been the clamor, even when you were in Parliament. People are saying she has too much authority. The thing about what I thought I would be hearing from you, like a bill that is before her, is what protection is given to her after she retires. Because if you want the next Auditor General to be as bold as the one who left, you must protect this one
to allow them to continue to do so. Our seconds are coming to a close, Jeremiah. Literally, we're at seconds to go. What do you think draining the swamp means? That everybody who was involved in anything at any time when things went wrong should have no business in the next government. Do you agree?
Everybody who says drain the swamp will give his own definition.
It's 9 a.m. Jeremiah Kioni,
you can
Secretary
drain it.
General of
you
the
can
Jubilee
drain it
Party,
different ways.
has been our guest this hour. Many things to continue considering, but we thank you for being in the hot seat this morning. Asante sana.
Nashukuru.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.